Here we go. Don McPherson. Donnie Mac. McPhee. What are the other nicknames?
There's really only one.
I actually ChatGPT'd this the other night.
Oh,
I'm
my
like,
goodness.
what are Don McPherson's nickname? Because I know you as Don, right? And so it only gave me Donnie Mac.
Yeah.
But welcome.
Thank you.
To the podcast.
Thanks
for being here, friend.
My pleasure. Absolutely.
I thoroughly enjoy our conversations.
Yes.
You know, walk away inspired and heard and understood. And so what better human to have on the first season? So thanks for taking a chance.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
No chance at all.
No chance at all.
No.
I appreciate that.
Fairly predictable that we'll have a great conversation.
Yeah. So I met you maybe, what has it been, 2 years ago?
2 years, about 2.
Okay. So I remember the first time you showed up on my LinkedIn network, and I was like, oh, he's doing work because with safe space and men's mental health, I was like, oh, there are like some similarities here.
Right.
And I'm like, and I feel like he is someone I should know. He clearly has a history with Syracuse and with football, and people know him. I have to admit, I was ashamed that I didn't know you.
That's okay.
Don,
I prefer that, actually.
which did surprise me when you walked in. But I was not expecting to get who I walked who walked into the Salt City Market that day. I was not expecting.
Okay.
You you have an aura about you. You have a presence about you, which I expected, but there's also a safety component. And as a woman, that is energy that I pick up on right off the bat.
Sure.
I have been trained to pick up energy in men, right? And I was like, wow, he's not anything. You didn't feel anything like I expected. And it's a good thing. It's a really good thing.
That's arguably the most wonderful thing anyone's ever said about me.
Oh my gosh. Well, I mean it.
Because that is a central part of how I got involved in doing work around men's violence against women. And people always ask me, like, what was it? And I can never explain it. And I don't think of myself as a protector of women, but I also don't want to feel imposing. I don't want to feel dangerous to women.
Yeah.
And I think that's an innate thing before I started doing the work. So to say that it felt that way, or I felt that way, means a lot.
Absolutely. You had a huge smile on your face, and you were just such a kind soul. And I don't think we talked about football at all, which I expected to be at least a topic of conversation. But I walked away being like, yeah, like he's going to do big things in this area. And so much of this podcast is about like the things that have happened to us that have shaped who we are today. But in your story, like you've said, there isn't a direct occurrence that occurred that led you to this line of work. Right. Correct?
No, I call myself the accidental activist in this work. I was doing work. I started working, doing a drunk driving program when I was in college. So going back to the mid-'80s, part of a program called Athletes Against Drunk Driving in New York State. And I fell in love with talking to young people about all the issues that we've all been raised not to talk about. And helping young people navigate, not just, I was part of the Just Say No generation, Nancy Reagan, Just Say No to Drugs.
Yeah.
But we weren't telling kids how to do it. How do you navigate the social life, all the pitfalls, all the what we used to call peer pressure, all those things that kids face. And I enjoyed talking with young people, helping them navigate it the way that I did it. Right? It was like you had to really do it and be intentional about it. And then when I retired from football and I went to work at Northeastern University, I went there to work with Richard Lapchick, who was the son of Joe Lapchick, who was the first head coach and general manager of the New York Knicks, who signed the first black player in the NBA in 1950. And Richard had just come back from Nelson Mandel's inauguration. So I went to work with this white man doing work around racism in sport. That was my issue, right? I was a black quarterback. And then I met a guy named Jackson Katz who had just launched the first program to engage men around men's violence against women, in particular in athletics, in sport. And I was blown away. I have a chapter in my book titled 29. I was 29 years old the first time I heard anyone talk about masculinity in any real way, any complete way. And also the issue of men's violence against women, that when I started going back in my history, I saw moments in time when I was exposed to it. And then I had to come to terms with the fact that my silence was a big part of the problem.
That hits.
That hits.
That hits, because I think a lot of people think that staying silent is a way of protecting themselves, right? Not speaking out against the crowd, not speaking out against a certain person or a certain structure. Yet in reality, it's just adding right to the issue at hand.
Without question. And I had to layer on and come to the realization that if I was using my platform as an athlete to try to do social change work with young people, then my silence around this issue was making that issue even worse.
Right.
So I had to really look at myself and say, all right, you've been doing this on issues that, as you say, things you've been raised not to talk about, or issues that it was easy for me to talk to kids about drugs, right? Drugs are illegal, or drunk driving. You're too young to drink.
You don't do that.
You don't do that, right? Those things were easy. But when it came to relationships and when it came to how we interact with women as men and as men to ourselves, there was just so much to unpack that I couldn't do it just casually. It had to be a deep dive because there's just too much to unpack. As I said, it wasn't just, and this is where my work has evolved, it wasn't just how men treat women, how do men treat themselves? And how do we raise our boys? And how do we as men evolve throughout the lifespan to see ourselves as whole people?
Right.
And so it's a never-ending journey for me. There's no finish line. I always say that manhood is not something you arrive at and then you're done, because then you spend the rest of your life defending that thing that you thought was complete. It really is an evolution. And so it's been a daily journey of a conversation that I have with myself and then I have with the public.
Right. I've got to believe that's internally got to be your journey first before you can then put it out into the world.
And that's what I find. I'm a critic of a lot of things. And I find sometimes even in the field of, I say that a lot of men and men like myself have been doing the work that women have asked us to do, women and survivors have asked us to do. We haven't been doing the work that our boys need. And I first have to look at the boy inside me. What did the boy inside me need and continues to need to grow and to evolve. And so it is a constant, yes, it is a constant learning and a process. And in writing the book that I published in 2019, I had to go back. I had to go back to the first fight I had when I was 10 years old because two little boys throwing rocks at each other all of a sudden started calling each other feminine names and didn't realize that misogyny was why these two 10-year-olds were fighting in the playground. And I had to really understand my own path of, as I say sometimes, I'm a man in recovery, right? My own path of misogyny and the sexism that was in many ways governing my life.
Yeah. And can you trace that right up through college athletics and like what you were exposed to, like you said, as a black quarterback, but also what you got as the quarterback? Like you had to have gotten a very interesting lens of masculinity across the board.
You're getting to something that I now refer to as the cycle of narrow masculinity. And
Ooh.
Yes, and so it begins with the bell hooks quote that the first act of violence that patriarchy asks of males is not violence against women; it's violence against ourselves. And I'm paraphrasing bell hooks, which no one should ever do, but I'm going to. And if we don't do, as boys, do a good enough job of cutting off our what she calls psychic self-mutilation, cutting off our emotional side, then society will create, patriarchy will create rituals that do it for us. I thrived in one of those rituals, right? Football and sports. And so the cycle is, the title of my book is You Throw Like a Girl. So the first thing the boys learn is that bell hooks quote, right? Shut down your feelings, be a man, suck it up. And then we go from being told to shut down our feelings, to learning how to function without them. And then, because we still live in a patriarchal world, I don't have to be a whole man, right? I can be a boy playing video games until I'm 30 and not mature, not grow, because society will allow me to do that in the patriarchy. So I thrived in the patriarchy. So I shut my feelings down, learned to function without them, right? Suck it up, man up, be the little brooding, little, moody little boy that I was. But then I found identity in it. And then my identity was rewarded. Right, my identity was rewarded as a football player who didn't show emotion, who didn't show feelings. Who I got hurt so bad, my bone was almost sticking out of my chest, and I was telling the doctor that when they were taping me up, that it was too tight and I wouldn't be able to pitch the ball. I thought I was still going to play because I had been conditioned to ignore my feelings. And I always say that if I can ignore my own feelings, how can I understand
100%
those of someone else? And I grew up as the youngest of 5 kids and 3 boys. The whole I'll give you something to cry about, but also learning how to shut off my physical feelings and being beat up by my brothers, and that was part of the sort of the rite of passage, if you will. And so I learned to ignore my own feelings. And again, how do I understand? And I experienced it. I experienced it from my brothers. I experienced it from older athletes. I experienced it from coaches. And this is where, when I talk about silence, the silence of my father as the man in my life validated the noise of coaches and other men who were telling me to suck it up, telling me to man up, and telling me that's what it meant to be a man. And so I was validated. That's the cycle of narrow masculinity. We learn to ignore our feelings. We learn to function without them. Then we're rewarded if we function without them really well, right? The man who works 90 hours a week and just keeps pushing and doesn't slow down, and it gets rewarded. That kind of masculinity, that kind of behavior of men. And then we pass it on. Mm-hmm. We pass it on to the next. We model it and we pass it on to so that cycle maintains itself.
Gosh, yes. And it leaks out. And it leaks out in a lot of different ways. And what you talked about, that relationship with a woman, right? If a man isn't managing his emotions, the woman becomes the mirror to that, right? Because a woman in our feminine is all about emotions. It's all about this gentle energy, this very, vulnerable energy. And what they see in us actually causes a reaction in a male that has not owned his emotional intelligence.
You, as a woman, represent everything that I've been told about myself I'm supposed to be ashamed of.
Shutting down. Yes.
Correct.
Yes. So then we become the outlet.
Correct. And we blame you for it.
Right.
You get to, and I always say that the first woman that boys see as less than are our mothers.
It's their moms, yeah.
Right, and that's our mothers who do everything for us, but we know that, that's mother's work, right? That cooking and cleaning and, those kinds of things. And dad gets to go off and not have these responsibilities. And so we see our mothers as being, that's why mother jokes, men will defend their mothers. I always say, well, if someone offends your father, no, my dad can take care of himself. So you already learned that your mother's less than because you've been told as a boy, you're supposed to take care of her. And she's the one actually taking care of you. And so that's the first thing that happened. But that other part of that cycle is it doesn't just bleed out in our relationships with women. I was fortunate. I did something that society valued, right? So I could stand on the masculinity, on the kind of tough guy stuff in an environment that society valued and commodified, in fact. Most men don't. And so where do they demonstrate it? Where do they demonstrate the behavior that validates the narrow masculinity in which they were raised?
Right.
And usually it's something,
there's an outlet.
Antisocial, violent, and
behind closed doors.
A lot of yes.
Absolutely. It's so clear to me where it's all stemming from. Like, it's so clear. So let me ask you, like, your eyes start to open after college, right? You start to get into your work. Your eyes start to open to this. How do you even start to tap into those parts inside of you and start to rewrite your own conditioning so that you can then go and literally teach it and educate others?
So I say that I don't do hard work. I do courageous work. Mm. And hard work are, it's summer. They're redoing 81. It's hot.
And 690.
And 690. Right?
And every other road. Yep.
Right? And so you pass people doing hard work. It's hot. And so there's a lot of people who do hard work. I don't do hard. I do courageous work. And what I mean by that is it requires introspection. It requires me to say things out loud. It's funny because now when I finish sometimes a talk or a lecture or a workshop, I'll have people come up to me afterwards and ask me if I'm okay, because I disclose and I talk about what's going on in my life, and it's what's going on in everyone's lives.
Yeah.
But we don't talk about it, and so saying things out loud to me, it's not just disarming, but it's also, I have this thing where I ask people, tell me something about yourself that nobody knows and is nobody's business. And I want people to sit with that for a second, because usually the first thing that comes to mind is the last thing you're going to say out loud.
Right.
Right? That's where you hold the most shame. That's where you hold the most fear. You have to assess the room, whether or not again, courageous work, whether or not I'm ready to disclose this thing, either in front of strangers or people that I work with every day. And that's where I sit in how much am I, because we all have it. We all have that thing or things. It might be a period of our life. It might be behaviors. It may be things we've experienced at the hands of voices of others. But we all have it, and so the more that I do it, the more that I practice it, the easier it becomes. Mm-hmm. The issues don't become easier, but the courageous work becomes easier.
Yeah. I've got to believe that you have heard so many stories and seen so many things, Don. And I mean, you have that ability. You're a safe space in yourself. Like I talk about your energy. So when women do have things that have happened, like it's very clear that you are one of those safe individuals to open up to. Mm. And so I'm sure you have heard a lot. And so how do you take care of yourself like that? How do you recharge?
I'm really good at taking my time. When I don't mean like being slow. I mean taking my time. Mm. I am really good at, which is why I am to people in my personal life, I can be somewhat of a grouch at times. I'm a curmudgeon, and it's not because I'm. I laugh. I have some neighbors now who are very young. They're part of a religious organization, and so, but they're young and they're and I try to be mean one day because I wanted to create a boundary.
Oh, okay.
And it didn't work. I went next door like, I'm going to be mean, and then before 2 minutes later, I was like the Grinch. My heart just started getting bigger and bigger, and I couldn't, because they were young women, and I was all of a sudden I wanted to like help protect them and let them know, the community that they had entered in. So, but I'm very good at claiming my time, and I also. I remember the first time I had it was actually a man in front of me telling me some stuff that I knew I wasn't capable of handling. Mm-hmm. And in my brain, my entire being turned around, dropped to my knees, and started praying. Mm. And I was mindful of my face that it didn't show that that's what I was doing, but my entire being had turned around, was on my knees, saying, God, just give me the patience, give me the open heart to hear what this person's saying. To say things that I know I can't in this moment fix what's going on with this person, but that reassures this person that somebody cares.
Yeah.
And I've done that ever since. And that was the first time I was working a program in a prison, and it was the first time I'd heard another human being tell me about things that happened to them that I wasn't prepared to hear.
Yeah. Yeah, I can relate to that a little bit with safe space and with
I'm sure
that in so much of those moments for individuals are wrapped in so much shame, right? So much fear. So there's such strong emotions. And so that when they are opening up to you, that this is like a moment
Yes.
that like, don't mess this up, right? Like
That's
hold
right.
this space,
That's
like
right.
don't mess this up because they're showing up in the most bravest form that they can.
Absolutely.
And so, so I get it. You take your time, which is a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
Good way of putting it.
Because you have to take it. You have to take it because the world's not going to give it to you.
No.
So you have to seize it.
No. Okay, so let's go back. After you started this work, how did this continue to mold? Take us on that journey a little bit.
So I met Jackson Katz. I had just retired from football. I had always struggled with my identity as an athlete.
Say more on that. What do you mean?
I'm born in 1965. I'm born at the height of the Civil Rights Movement. I have a Chinese grandmother, a white grandmother, two black Jamaican grandfathers. I grew up in a small hamlet, they called it, on Long Island. We had a couple of professional athletes. We had a member of the New York Yankees, Hector Lopez, his son Darryl, and I played football together as kids. Wani Williams played, we had professional athletes. Floyd Patterson, the professional boxer. It was a pretty affluent for the time. My father was a cop. My mother was a school nurse. I grew up very middle class Long Island. In a neighborhood that Martin Luther King came and spoke at the high school because of the racial tension in the community at the time in the 60s, late 60s. So I grew up with that sense of the civil rights movement and social justice. And then because I was a good athlete, my brothers were both athletes. My brothers were both professional athletes at one point. I transferred to a different high school that was predominantly white. And I knew my blackness. And yet I was very much assimilated to white culture. But I went to this high school where I was the quarterback of the football team. And I was one of the very few black people in the school. And so I started wearing a shirt and tie to school because I didn't want the white folks to think I was some poor kid literally from the other side of the tracks. I mean, there were tracks that separated the communities. And so I was always mindful of my identity and how people saw me. Mm-hmm. And it was at a time when the narrative was poor black men getting an opportunity to transcend racism through sport, which was not my case. And then when I came here, it was the same thing. I came to Syracuse, wore a shirt and tie to class, and everyone thought that I, was whatever. I was trying to project it. Headphones on, again, taking my time. And I always thought that my struggle was about my race. And then when I met Jackson Katz and he started describing masculinity in a way that no one had ever had, I realized that my struggle was with my gender. My masculinity was more damaging to my life than my race.
Oh.
And so I started to just unpack that. It wasn't because I was black. It was because I wasn't a football player. I used to say this even before I had this understanding that I play football, but I'm not a football player. I wasn't going to be that guy. I disappointed so many people when they met me because they expected some football player. I'm like, nah, man, I don't even know. I got drafted by the Eagles, and I didn't even know what conference they were in because I didn't watch the NFL. Like, I watched, but I didn't know all the stuff. And so then I had to really start doing, and it was stuff that I already knew. For example, I have another book in me that I want to write called Six Songs of Inspiration. And they were the 6 songs I used to listen to before every game or when I needed some inspiration. And 2 of them were from the film Yentl, right? Barbra Streisand, like you can't find a more Barbra Streisand, a more Jewish film than Yentl, right? and that's what used to get me hyped for games because of what she struggled with in that film that was so dear to who she was and her identity. And so I went through this period, I'm still in it, of really just unpacking all of that. And it was fun because I say freed by feminism, right? I was freed by this way of looking at myself that was not governed by the ways in which I was raised. And it allowed me to say, oh, okay, I'm sensitive, I'm empathetic, I'm really caring, and I'm an empath. I never understood. I wish I could remember her name, but I can remember the girl who got hit by a dodgeball in like the 6th grade. I remember the look on her face, the absurdity of this ball coming at her, which is why dodgeballs, it's a brutal sport. Yes. I loved it as a kid. I actually had a team called the Bombers, and but I remember feeling so bad for her. She didn't want that. And it was, and I remember those times when you see especially with children, because they don't choose.
Right.
What happens to them. And that's all of us.
That's all of us. We're all children.
We're all children.
I've seen this part of you in the community, which I sit back and watch and now you show up in such a confident manner, but when individuals come up to you looking for this idol that they have grown up like up here, and all of a sudden you like destroy them with your emotional intelligence, they don't know how to respond. They don't. But that's exactly what you're supposed to be doing on this planet, Don.
Yes.
Like you are modeling like, yeah, I'm that, and I'm also this, and this is just as masculine. And like, I don't know. It's, I could watch it time and time again. I actually like watching like men sometimes in this uncomfortable, I don't know what to say to him because that just caught me off guard.
I actually enjoy it.
Do you? Okay. I'm not the only one that...
I enjoy it, but at the same time, I'll actually go back sometimes. There's a couple of guys I've actually apologized to them. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I couldn't fulfill what you needed in that moment. Especially when I hear from people who were children in the 80s and they came through a game with their grandfather or their dad, and their grandfather, their dad is gone, and they say that was one of my best memories. That's when
that's different.
I'll lean into that.
That's different.
Yes,
of course. And I truly believe you were given the gifts you were given to be able to stand on the stages that, like, there's a reason. You have a massive message that you're bringing, a message that literally is where evolution needs to go. If anything's going to change. And forever, we have been focused on prevention for women violence and getting shelters and like helping women. Like, we've been focusing on the wrong population. Like, yes, women need all of this help and support. I agree, but nothing's going to stop until we start bringing men what they need, which is education and healthy modeling and ways to tap back in to that emotional self.
Yeah. One of the earliest quotes, you say something and it resonates with people, was that we don't raise boys to be men, we raise them not to be women.
Yeah.
And I stood on that quote for many years, and that was sort of but then when I really started thinking about, okay, then what do we want for our boys? And I always every time I went into a room, whether it was an athletic team or fraternity, I always realized, and I knew this, and I was proud of being accountable to women who weren't in the room, but I wasn't being accountable to the men who were in the room. And I didn't mind that initially, because what I was doing was at the behest of women. I was doing the work that women, as I said a moment ago. But then I had to pivot. What do we want for our boys? And we have not, and I've been in the field for 30 years, 30 plus years, we have not been intentional about our boys. And if you the old adage, do something over and over expecting different results, we've been doing the same thing for 30 years in talking to boys about trying to prevent men's violence against women. If we are not deliberate and intentional with our boys, we're never going to solve that problem.
Yeah.
And we have to do that, and we have to remove the notion of the chivalry of the work. We have to remove the notion that I'm doing this to protect women and girls, because if my job as a man is to protect women and girls, then don't mess with my violent masculinity, right? I'm going to need that to protect in the ways that we think about protection. And so we have to even remove the chivalry. We have to even remove the notion that I'm doing this to protect women. This is truly about, what do I want for you as a boy? Because he's not going to hear me, and he's not going to see validation in it unless it's truly about him. And so I talk about aspirational masculinity. I want boys to live in awe of themselves and in awe of who they are as boys and in awe of the boys around them in the culture. And the awe is authentic, whole, and evolving. And I don't like cheeky acronyms like that, but I made this one up, so I love it. Right?
Okay, we love this. Okay.
Right. But it is, I want it to be affirming. I want it to be aspirational, and the authentic is be your authentic self. Who are you truly authentically? And be whole. And I'm not sure which is more difficult, but they go hand in hand. When you're truly being your authentic self, you're going to find your wholeness. You're going to find the courage to be whole, to be sensitive, to be loving, to be empathetic, to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
To see the strength in. I had a guy named Mo Jackson who played at Syracuse, and he's out in Rochester, and he had this organization called Boys Recognizing Our Struggles. I said, Mo, just change struggles to strengths. Right? Because we're so used to seeing the negative, how I'm surviving something or I'm transcending. No, man, your emotional capacity is your strength. Your ability to be vulnerable is your strength. Is there's such a strength in it. I always say, which is more courageous, showing your and sharing your emotions or hiding from them and shutting them down and ignoring them, right? It's so much more of it. And the evolving piece, authentic, whole, and evolving is, I'm 60 years old and I'm still figuring it out. I'm still evolving.
Of course.
I'm figuring out what it means to be a divorced man, what it means to be a dad, what it means to have a daughter who doesn't talk to me because she's upset about the divorce and who I am. And I have to evolve in that. I have to evolve with the struggles and the difficulties in my life in order to see the joys and the happiness and the ways in which I survive each day. And so that's the conversation. And it's a conversation for, and this is the hard part very often, is that we who do caring work are good at owning victimhood. Mm-hmm. And we stand on it. As I said, the work that I've been doing has been informed by survivors and by women who have been dealing with patriarchy and oppression and all that. We have to, if we don't see that men, even men who have benefited from the patriarchy, are victims to the narrow masculinity in which they've been asked to live, we're never going to help them grow.
Right.
We have to be able to, and I don't know, victim is a hard word because, again, we're very good at owning victimhood. Someone did something to you that harmed you. I would say that a lot of men harmed my life by not encouraging me to live my wholeness. And I benefited from that.
Right.
That's that cycle that I mentioned a moment ago. And so it's a very complex conversation. I don't make it complex. I make it very simple. Live your authentic self. Live your whole self. Let me show you what that looks like. And you go from there.
God, it's bravery. And I mean, I can only relate as a woman trying to step into her authentic self, right? I can't imagine as a man stepping in to a vulnerable, when society is telling you to do something completely different, or where your, let's our attachment to our parents, right? Our father figures, like, people go lifetimes trying to be seen and heard by their fathers, and like as a young boy, and that striving for that acceptance and that validation that they're probably never going to get in the way that they need. And so, wait, you're telling me I need to show up like this? Like, I just think there has to feel like there's no right step for them, you know, like society is still saying one thing, yet in my eyes, women can't show up as themselves in a beautiful, feminine way unless men start to show up in this type of masculine energy.
Absolutely.
It forces me. I know for years, I'm still like disarming masculine energy because it's our guard. Like, we have to protect ourselves from you guys.
Right.
So I have to act like a man. I have to act big and strong, like I got my shit together, right? Like, but that's not what I'm supposed to be in. Yet I can't do that until I start to feel safe with somebody. Right. And so it's like this, it's like our genders of just like this, we're off balance.
Yeah. And to your earlier point, If my job is to be the protector of you, then I have to stay rigid. Then I can't allow the femininity, the feminine side to come in or to take over, because it makes me soft and therefore I'm weak. And we don't see the protective strength in being caring and loving and emotionally honest. We don't see the protective strength in that. And I, as I mentioned, I have 2 daughters, and I can't protect them. I don't even know where they are right now. Right? My daughter was in Europe for the last semester, doing a semester abroad, and I didn't have her location on the phone. I have people say, "You don't know where she is." I'm like, "What am I going to do?" Right? And so you have to be able to be, first of all, when she was younger, to give her as much information so that she can make good decisions. And that's one of the things where we harm our kids. We think we're protecting them by not giving them information. We're harming them by not giving them information, because they're going to find out one way or another. So do you want it to come from you? Or do you want it to come from some, nefarious or seedy other source? And that, to me, was the best way to protect them.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And though I've found having those conversations with my kids now, it's uncomfortable because those conversations were not openly had, right? And now in our house, we're talking about all the things. Like there's no filter, and I'm like, Graham needs to know this stuff just as much as Maddie needs to know this stuff, right? Like I can educate Maddie all about this, but Graham, it's equal. And so, yeah, it's scary. I was having a conversation with a friend the other day, and she was talking about her teenage boy, and she was like, I'm listening to them just rip each other apart. And afterwards I brought him aside, and I'm like, that's how you guys talk? That can't feel very good, right? And he's like, no, it's just, we just make fun of each other, and we just and I'm like, no, that doesn't feel good for anybody. As much as we're, and I'm like, but that's the only way they know how to connect.
Right. And what happens before that even happens is that boys go into it by removing their emotion to it.
Yeah.
And that's why I say that we're victims of this culture that says that being a boy means you remove your emotional behavior or your emotional identity. I've seen situations where boys do things so damaging to one another, and they'll be called the perpetrators of something that's so damaging to themselves. Mm-hmm. Hazing is a prime example of this, where I've had people say, well, why do boys do these awful things to each other, and they record it? And I say because bearing witness to it is a part of the ritual. Mm. It has to be seen, it has to be known that I endured this thing, that I went through this nonsense. And there was a situation that happened up at Syracuse University years ago where these boys did they were offensive to everybody. They offended everybody. And those boys, to me, and they were engineering students, and they all got kicked out of school. I can't imagine being an engineering student in your 4th year and getting kicked out of college, what that does to you. And they were doing things that was just for each other and to mock others, but entertaining one another. And it was very easy to see them as bad guys. I saw them as victims of a culture of masculinity that says that's how you impress your friends. Because they were friends. It wasn't like there's some adversarial relate. They were friends. They were fraternity brothers. And they were victims of a culture of masculinity that says that's how you show you belong. By being the ugliest human being you can imagine.
Gosh, breaks my heart.
Yeah.
So how do we stop this? Where do you start? And I know I want to hear about the book. I want to hear about everything that you're doing, but I also want to know, for people that are listening, where do you even start having these conversations?
One is, and this is the work I'm doing right now with YMCA and New York State. The YMCA was created in the UK in the 1800s. And it was the Young Men's Christian Association for wayward boys, for boys who had lost their way, right? boys were struggling. There was change, and I don't use Chat GPT. Is that what it's called?
Yep.
But I did look
Very
up.
often. I can tell.
I don't look at. I have no idea, right? But I did look up what was going on at that period of time. It's very similar to what's happening right now. So the Boy Scouts were created at a time when there was a lot of change in Europe, a lot of change in the UK, and the boys were struggling with change. Same thing in the early 1900s in the US. The Boy Scouts were created because there was all this industrial revolution and the beginning of a more global economy, women encroaching in the 19th Amendment, right? Women encroaching in what were previously all male spaces. The same thing happened in the 70s, post-civil rights movement, more globalization, the steel mills and big agri taking over family farms, men struggling, the Promise Keepers. So you have these periods where men are struggling with change. Again, evolving, and women encroaching in, and white men in particular. So you have all this immigration, right? You have all these things that are happening now in our country. This is why Make America Great Again, like it was. Let's go back to when we didn't have to worry about women. We didn't have to. When men weren't held accountable in divorce, right? Men just left in the 60s, right? There was no divorce court holding men financially and in other ways accountable to family. And we're in another period of time where men are struggling.
Yes.
And we cannot go back to those old things that we've been doing in the past, trying to double down on the rugged individualism, trying to double down on sort of the stoic, be the stoic, silent type, just suck it up men and force. Violence comes from trying to control something that you cannot control. And so why do we see more violence in our streets? Government violence, not just civil unrest, right? You see more of this, we're going to force things to be the way we see them. And in general, men are struggling. There's empirical data, highest rates of suicide. I'm talking to men in rural parts of the state, and then I see the next day that there's a very high rate of suicide amongst farmers who are struggling with where the economy is going. And there's a very high rate of suicide. New York State held a conference last year on the high rate of suicide amongst construction workers. We know the high rates in law enforcement. And so these professions where predominantly white men who have occupied, who have been promised the American dream, who have been promised, and those things are going away. And so men are struggling. And we have to recognize that they're struggling, and it requires. And this is not the work for everybody, by the way. I'm not even suggesting that women do this work. This is the responsibility of men to call out other men in a very loving way, but also in a way to say that we are made vulnerable by the same things that make us warriors. And when I published the book in 2019, I had a list at the time of 33 men that I knew through college, Syracuse University, and 2 teams in the NFL. And then my association with professional football. 33 guys from that association who were dead. 6 of them were suicides. God. And there were men who, on the outside, checked the box on every bit of privilege you can check. Cisgendered, heterosexual, white men, not all white, actually, but men who were considered warriors with the pinnacle of masculinity, kill themselves? Couldn't handle it? Why? And I believe CTE is a thing, but if CTE is chronic traumatic encephalopathy, the degenerative brain disease from multiple concussions, which is the, Reader's Digest definition. If that comes from concussions, I shouldn't be here.
Yeah.
I put my concussion count up against most rooms I'm in on a regular basis. Those men had a multitude of things going on in their lives that no one wanted to talk about. Whether it was drug addiction, alcohol addiction, divorce, financial problems, child estrangement, a whole host, identity issue. One of those men is a guy named Junior Seau, who my brother played for the San Diego Chargers. My brother's a pastor in San Diego. Junior grew up in San Diego. Junior was a larger-than-life football player. He was ferocious, and he was the most gregarious human being you could ever meet. Everyone in San Diego, he knew him as Buddy. Hey, Buddy. Hey, Buddy. Knew everybody that way. And after Junior killed himself, there was a story on ESPN that detailed sort of what was going on in his life. And one of the things he said was he was in the airport and nobody knew him. Now, I don't like, as we've talked about, I don't like to be known. I don't like when people know me, and ironically, I moved to Syracuse. There's something there, Freud.
There's something there. There's something
we can talk about that.
We don't need to dig into that right now.
Right. But if I'm in the airport and someone doesn't recognize me, I'm going to notice. I'm not going to be bothered, but I'm going to notice. And that means, as I said earlier, my identity as a football player is inextricable from my identity as Don. Right. And so when you don't have that other piece, when you're not allowed to evolve and see yourself as something broader than that, and you're stuck in that, which for many men, we're stuck in our identity is our work. Identity is how we show up.
Yep.
And when that goes away, there's a reason why men in my demographic, 50 plus, divorced, highest rate of suicide. And people often think of suicide as weak. It's children. It's children on the margins. No, it's men in my age bracket, because we don't know how to evolve into this, what may be the final stage of life when we're useless, right? I'm not going to name names, but there's a guy who talks about masculinity a lot, and he's got a big platform, and he says men are protectors, providers, and procreators. Well, no. I'm sorry, I'm struggling financially. I'm not providing. I'm helping my daughters get through college, right? But I'm not providing for anyone. I'm not a protector, because I live alone in East Syracuse, and I'm not out there protecting. And I'm not a procreator. Had a vasectomy after the second one was born, right? So who am I?
Who am I then?
Who am I if I'm not protecting, providing, and I'm not procreating? What and who am I as a man?
That's huge. The loss of identity. If I am not A, B, C, and D, what the hell am I?
Correct. Right. And if I'm not protecting, I had a young man the other day in a workshop here in Syracuse. Well, men, we got to protect. What are you protecting? And how? Right? You're going to stand as the guardian. You're going to stand up, not sleep and stand with Malcolm X, the AK-47 in the window your whole life. But there's this notion that that's what we're supposed to do. And when we're no longer needed to do that, I went to Italy to spend time with my daughter, because she was bouncing around Europe by herself, staying in hostels and student rail path. Loved it, right? And I went and I followed her around, and it was the most glorious week of my life. I watched my daughter fearlessly travel through Europe. And if she said she was going to do the same thing in the U.S., I'm like, are you crazy? You're not getting on Amtrak and going to Philly and then staying in some hostel in Philadelphia and then going to D.C. or Baltimore, and then jumping on a plane and going and doing the same thing. You're crazy. She was doing that in different countries. And it was because she had the confidence and the strength to go do that. And I didn't have to protect her. Mm. And it was the most glorious week of my life. I got to watch the result of how we protect people by giving them information and giving them love and support, knowing that, and I know this from my own experience, that if I ever fell down, I know my parents were there.
Right.
And that was the most important thing.
But then that encouragement then, like, I'm going to take care, I'm going to support, I'm going to cheer on, I'm going to do all those things in those earlier years. And then when it's her turn to fly, you're going to let her fly.
And I'm not going to judge. Mm. I think that's the most difficult thing for adults now, because we're very good at saying, well, it was different when we were younger. No, it wasn't different. It was different in that we didn't have as much access to one another as we do now.
Right.
But, I challenge any adult who's in their 40s or 50s, what were you doing when you were 18? Right? What were you doing? And what would it have been like if your parents had GPS on you when you were 16, 17 years old?
Yeah.
Right? And you were, why are they in that field?
Why is that field, right? I don't think anything's back there.
There are cows back there. Why are they in the woods for 7 hours?
I feel like you know how I grew up then.
Right. See? We all did it.
No, I agree. It is calling for men to evolve right now.
Yeah.
And what's happening is, I had a couple women on before you were here. Women are so done that they would rather be alone than they would rather say, yep, I will raise the kids and I will bring in the income and I will be peacefully by myself than enter into another relationship. And it's forcing this really uncomfortableness to start to happen, even more so than what they're already feeling.
One of my best friends, who was a teammate, he's a faculty up at SU now. We talk about this all the time, almost every day. I had a friend of mine say to me years ago that we've been doing all this work for women and girls, and we've been preparing women and girls we're more comfortable with Jeanette Epps being in space, a black woman from Syracuse, right, who went to Syracuse City Schools, in space, than we are with a boy being a nurse. Right, so we've been really intentional about our girls to evolve and to be able to do so much, but we haven't been doing it for our boys. And I had a friend of mine say years ago, she goes, "When are we going to start preparing our boys to rise up to meet these girls?" And it's showing itself so profoundly right now, and I'm seeing it just socially. I think obviously that women are just done with, and there's no. It's obviously relationships, intimate relationships, but it's just generally, there's no movement from men to say, hey, how do we step up? That's why I say this is the work that men have to do.
Right.
And men almost don't even see it. We've learned, I keep looking up like the answers are up here.
If you see them, let me know, Don.
The topic gets really complex. I'm like, where somebody
give me something.
Somebody give me something. But there's no. When you're younger as a boy, you learn that. First of all, you learn that sex is what we do to women, not with women. And so, and we also learn that women are supposed to resist it. And so we learn all the ways in which we're supposed to trick women, right? And connive and scheme and even if you just watch television from 20 years ago, men were saying it in so many ways. Seinfeld and 2.5 Men. These shows that you watch, I watch on reruns. I'm like, wow, how much men were just conniving and scheming and shallow, and we thought nothing of it. And men we're still doing that, and to the point that we don't even want to bother you all anymore. We're going to go to artificial intelligence.
Just having this conversation with a friend the other day.
I don't have to be emotionally. I can.
You don't even need it.
I don't even need it anymore.
Yep.
I don't even need to be emotionally competent. I can. And I remember years. This is before even like the internet became what it is now. A friend of mine, a woman just recently divorced. She was a school counselor on Long Island. This is like 20 years ago. And she goes, "Don, why are these men asking me these weird questions?" She was on like a dating site. I said, "He's probably sitting in the same chair where he watches porn, and you're just another image on the screen." And so the conditioning of it. I've talked to men who were addicted to pornography, and I realized when I first wrote my book, it was the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s when I first wrote it, and I had a chapter on media. And to tell you how far back it goes, it was DVD, the streets on DVD, because back then DVD was the platform, and it was where we learned about sex. It was on the streets. Right?
Yep.
And now it's porn in the pocket, and it's everywhere, and it's almost normalized in so many ways because it is so prevalent and accessible, and it's right on the phone.
Yes.
And I it's to the point where I met a guy years ago who was a porn addict, and he was speaking at West Point, and he was speaking, and I went and I spoke with him. I wanted to hear what he had to say because I was really curious to what that looked like, and I realized from talking with him that his relationship was not with even the pornography. His relationship was with his phone, and that he was getting aroused just by logging onto his computer.
Wow.
And the reason he got to that point was because a woman who he was dating did not arouse him, but his computer did. And I think about, I'll never forget, it's a tangent, but driving from Houston to Tampa. When I was in the NFL, I just got cut in Houston. I was driving to my parents' house, and I drove most of the drive at night. And when I got to my parents' house at 7 a.m, I tried to go to sleep. And when I closed my eyes, all I saw was I-10, Biloxi. I saw signs and all the things that showed up in the dark. And this was my goodness, this was in the early 90s. I immediately thought of kids watching video games and television, and how much it occupies their brains, and how much it dictates their reality. And so now when you say that, I've been asking the question for years, how many kids, again, the issue we've been raised not to talk about, how many boys in particular from their parents were given a graphic, honest, and sustained conversation about their bodies and intimacy. And intimacy is not just physical.
Right.
Very few hands have gone up. And so we have a generation of boys who are being raised on rape. That's what they're watching. And that to them is intimacy. And so where are they finding that in real life?
And when you take that and the disconnection from your emotions, right?
Correct.
So intimacy comes from emotional connection. So if you are shut off, there's just that physical aspect when it comes
Correct.
and it just comes to the act, right?
That's right.
And so like the connection, the actual connection isn't possible with another human. So why not be using your phone? Like it's a much easier way to get the job done and not have to worry about actually dealing with another human's needs, right?
That's right. And not just another human's needs, your own.
Yeah.
Like if you're not in touch with your own needs, then you don't know how to express in relationship what you want or what you feel.
Right.
And that's, to me, is like even the more sad part is that you have so many boys who are not being taught how to be intimate. Listen, and this could always be a sad conversation or an entertaining conversation. And the entertaining part is showing men how ridiculous we are. Even the ways in which we talk about masturbation, it's violent to ourselves. We beat, we choke, we spank. It's violent even to ourselves.
Yeah.
The language of how we talk about it.
Yeah.
We haven't even taught, again, if I ignore my own feelings, how can I extend to others?
Right. Right. You can only go, and I love this quote, you can only go as far with someone as they have gone within themselves.
Correct.
Right. And so like, yeah, everything, the whole picture, it all comes to emotional development and self-awareness. But a man needs to feel safe enough to go there. A man
Right.
needs to feel safe enough to go to those parts within himself.
Right.
And it needs to be modeled. And who else? I mean, seriously, Don, though, like you are the idea of masculine for a lot of men out there. And then you show up and speak to this level. You speak to this depth, and you are changing conversations. You really are. You really are. And it's a conversation that needs to be had in every room at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I do believe, we said this off air when we first sat down, it's really hard to be a caring person or being in the business of caring, because we're normalizing insensitivity and apathy.
Yeah.
And I've lost so many senses of community. You know, I remember community when as a kid, community meant, we played pole-to-pole football, and I can remember the cracks in the ground was first base and second base were cracks in the ground in the street. You came home when it got dark, when the street lights came on. That was when you were supposed to go home, and your neighbors would look out for you, and that was community in the nostalgia of growing up in the 70s on Long Island. And then as I got older, community was someplace online. But even that now is so frayed.
Yeah.
That we no longer live in community, and therefore we're no longer feeling accountable or caring of one another. And we're being not just governed by division, we're also being molded because there's commodity in division.
Yes.
There's commodity in narcissism. You can have everything just the way you want it. and when you want it and where you want it. You can Uber Eats it, you can DoorDash it, you can isolate, and you can have everything just. Every now and then you see people, you see something where I never knew this thing was supposed to do this and this thing was supposed to do that, and it's all laziness. It's all, I never realized that I could be this lazy, and so it frightens me that we no longer. One of my favorite things, and I probably is a total tangent as I want to do, are brief moments with perfect strangers.
Mm.
I love brief moments with perfect strangers. Just to say something to make someone laugh or to make someone feel seen. And I usually get the most out of that because it frees me from my little,
I get that.
When I take my time.
I get that so much when you're really present and
Yes.
like you had the random conversation with the cashier woman or
Yes.
yeah.
Or someone who wears a name tag.
Yeah.
If someone wears a name tag, I call them by their name. Because if you have a job where you have to wear a name tag, it's not that great of a job.
Yeah, you deserve to be
You
seen.
deserve to be seen.
Deserve to be seen. Okay, so I have questions for you.
Okay.
We're going to do a flash.
It's like
question.
a rapid round.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you have to catch a football.
Oh, God.
And you knew I was going to bring You knew I was going to bring the football into this, okay?
You realize
this makes it entertaining for the people that are watching.
Okay.
What were you going to say?
I was a quarterback. I threw the ball. I didn't catch it.
Do you think I know how to do either of those things?
Well, I'm just telling you that I'm not really good at catching.
Well, that makes it even more fun when you don't.
Terrific.
Okay. So you don't know. First thing off the top of your head.
Okay.
Okay, ready?
Are you going to throw the ball at me when you say this?
Yeah.
Oh, God. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. If you had a cat, what would its name be?
If I was a cat?
No, if you had a cat.
If I had a cat?
Yeah.
I had a cat named Chubby.
Oh.
It was my first pet.
I love that.
Chubby was a rascal.
Was Chubby
Oof.
chubby?
Chubby was chubby as a kitten. I guess that's how he got his name. But Chubby was a little bit promiscuous around town.
Oh.
Always some female cats. I mean, we had kittens everywhere. Chubby was a little bit of a...
Did you have a talk with Chubby?
I was too young. Chubby was a battler. Like, he'd disappear for a couple of days, come back wounded.
With like 8 new kittens.
He was an alley cat. He got in the house every now and then, but he was an alley cat.
Okay. I like it. Okay.
All right.
If football hadn't have been your gift, what sport would you have played? And you have to throw it back.
What sport would I have played?
Yeah.
Oh, nice catch. I don't know. I was bad at basketball. I can't shoot. Probably track. Track was my other sport.
Track.
I was a high jump and a hurdler. Yeah. I was state champ in high jump.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Did you have to run much as a quarterback?
No, as a quarterback, I was known as a runner, but I didn't like it. I shouldn't say I didn't like it. I didn't like that I did it. I really wanted to just stand and I wanted to be Billy Kilmer. You're too young to remember Billy Kilmer, but he was kind of an obese quarterback for the Washington team, and he kind of like wallowed up to the if that's a word, up to the line of scrimmage. He didn't.
Seriously?
Yeah, he was just kind of, was very mobile.
So that's who you aspired to be?
It wasn't, but we used to call my uncle Billy Kilmer because he was big, and he was the quarterback because he didn't want to run. Yeah.
That sounds amazing, Don. Okay. What is a hobby you have that would surprise the public?
I don't have any hobbies. Cooking.
I know. That's what I was going to say. I know you have a hobby.
Cooking is, I would say
That's
cooking.
a hobby.
It's a hobby. Yeah, because I'm not cooking for anyone, and I do it for myself. And
yep.
I like trying different recipes. Chef John, Food Wishes, is one of my favorites. I'll follow him and listen to his very corny jokes. But yeah, cooking.
Okay.
I don't know if that's surprising, though. Ooh.
That was so off. You did that on purpose so we don't have to do this anymore.
I didn't do it on purpose. It's just I can't.
You can't throw a football?
You know what? Want to hear something? When I knew I was done, I could not complete a pass from here to here.
Really?
I couldn't do it. And I psychologically, it
Psychologically.
was like pitchers like go through this and they can't get the ball off the plate, and it kills their career. That's what happened to me. I couldn't complete the short pass.
Wow.
And then it got in my head,
Yeah.
and I was done. I was done for a lot of other reasons, but that was
a big one.
What was the next question?
Favorite restaurant here in Syracuse?
I can't answer that.
What?
I can't answer that. I don't have one.
You don't have one.
No.
You have a few that you frequent, but you don't have a favorite. I'll let you stay with that.
Yeah. Okay.
I understand. Favorite sneaker of choice?
Chucks.
I know.
See, here's the thing. I'm the youngest of 5, 3 boys. I never had a set of brand new Chucks when I was a kid. I always had hand-me-down Chucks.
So that's the story with the Chucks.
They were always worn to my brother's feet.
Okay.
And so when I turned 50, I bought my first pair of brand new Chucks. And then I was at a black tie event in New York City at the Waldorf Astoria, and there was Roger Staubach, the great Dallas Cowboy quarterback, and he was wearing sneakers in a tuxedo. I said, Roger, what's up with the sneakers? He goes, I've been walking around the city all day with my wife, and my feet feel fantastic. I'm like, I'm done.
Yeah, that's been your look ever since, huh?
Ever since then, all I wear are Chucks. Tuxedo, jeans, that's it.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. How do you take your coffee?
If I'm on a plane, black.
Okay.
If I don't know, if I it's black. Otherwise, just a little bit of cream and a little bit of sugar.
Okay. And last one. Boat, train, car, plane, or rollerblades?
My dream is to retire on a lake with a boat. Doesn't need to be a big boat. I just want to be on the water.
Okay. Thank you
My
for
pleasure.
coming in today.
Absolutely.
Being you, raw, vulnerable, honest, all the things.
All the things.
All the
That's
things.
the only way we get through this.
That's the only way.
No one gets out unscathed.
We're all in this together.
We're all in this together.
No, I appreciate you, Don.
And I appreciate you. All that you have. I know you know. But I sort of have isolated myself in this town a little bit, and I watch from a distance, and I see you showing up for so many people in so many ways, and so I appreciate you too.
Thank you. And that's a little creepy, but thank you. I'm just kidding.
It probably is.
You're just kidding. Don is watching.
Yes,
That's
exactly. I'm watching, paying attention.
All right. We are out.
We're out.